I'm Daniel, 38, a structural engineer who builds bridges, literal ones, the kind that hold up under pressure. My wife, Claire, 36, is a graphic designer. Her world a kaleidoscope of color and creativity. We've been married for 12 years, parents to a bright-eyed 8-year-old, Mia. Our life in suburban Portland felt like a well-designed blueprint. Stable, predictable, beautiful. Claire's laugh could light up a room, and her late-night sketches often spilled into our conversations over coffee. I thought we were solid, like the steel beams I calculate to withstand storms. But cracks form silently, don't they? It started with small things: her phone face down on the counter, her late nights at the studio, her distracted smiles. I chalked it up to her big project, a rebrand for a local brewery. She'd always been passionate, throwing herself into her work. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was Claire, my Claire, who'd cry over sappy movies and leave sticky notes with doodled hearts on my lunchbox. But then I found a receipt in her coat pocket. Dinner for two at a place we'd never been. Dated a night she'd said she was working late. I held it, staring at the numbers, feeling the first tremor in my foundation. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof, not suspicions. I started paying attention, noticing her new perfume, the way she'd linger in the shower, washing away something I couldn't see. I told myself I was paranoid, that love doesn't erode like that. But the receipt burned in my pocket, a quiet warning I couldn't ignore. Claire's studio was her sanctuary, a loft downtown filled with paint-splattered canvases and mood boards. I'd always respected her space, but doubt is a relentless architect, redesigning your reality. One evening, claiming I was nearby for a site inspection, I dropped by unannounced. She was there, but so was Ethan, her collaborator, a wiry photographer with a man bun and a too-easy grin. They were laughing over a laptop, their heads close, her hand brushing his arm. It wasn't overt, but it was enough to twist something in my gut. Ethan left quickly, his eyes avoiding mine. Claire hugged me, her warmth familiar but distant, like a memory I couldn't grip. She showed me her designs, vibrant and chaotic, but I barely heard her. I was studying her, her flushed cheeks, the way her fingers fidgeted. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her, her breathing soft, and wondered who she was dreaming of. The next day, I checked her phone while she showered. No texts from Ethan, but a locked app hidden in a folder labeled Work. My hands shook as I tried her birthday, Mia's, our anniversary. Nothing worked. I felt like a thief, but the real theft was happening to me. I started tracking her car's GPS, a feature we'd installed for safety. Her late nights weren't always at the studio. Twice, she'd been at a hotel downtown. I didn't confront her. I needed to see it, to know it was real before my world collapsed. I became a detective in my own marriage, a role I despised. I rented a car to follow her, blending into the city's pulse. One Wednesday, she told me she had a client dinner. I kissed her goodbye, my lips cold, and trailed her to a boutique hotel, its neon sign mocking me. She met Ethan in the lobby, her dress clinging to her in a way that felt meant for him. They didn't touch, not there, but their ease, their shared glances, screamed intimacy. I watched them disappear into the elevator, my heart a collapsing bridge. I sat in the car for hours, gripping the steering wheel, imagining confronting them, imagining her excuses. When she came home at 1 a.m., she smelled of wine and lies, claiming the client meeting ran late. I nodded, my voice steady, but inside, I was fracturing. The next day, I hired a private investigator, a grizzled man named Paul who smelled of stale coffee. He didn't judge, just took my money and promised discretion. A week later, he delivered photos. Claire and Ethan at a park, her head on his shoulder. Claire entering his apartment. Claire laughing in a way she hadn't with me in months. The images were knives, each one carving away my denial. I thanked Paul, my voice hollow, and burned the photos in our backyard, the ashes mixing with the soil of our shared life. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed a plan, something to match the pain she'd built in me. Betrayal is a slow poison, but it sharpens your edges. I stopped being just Daniel, the husband, and became something colder, more calculated. Claire's affair with Ethan was a structure I could dismantle, but I wanted it to hurt, to linger. I started by researching Ethan. He was 32, a freelance photographer with a modest following online. His Instagram a curated lie of artistic depth. I found his clients, his bookings, his vulnerabilities. He wasn't rich, relying on gigs to maintain his bohemian charm. I contacted his main client, a gallery owner, posing as a concerned colleague, planting seeds of doubt about Ethan's reliability. I didn't lie outright, just suggested missed deadlines, inconsistent work. Within days, I saw a post from Ethan lamenting a canceled project. Felt good, but it wasn't enough. With Claire, I played the devoted husband, cooking dinners, planning family outings, watching her squirm under my affection. She sensed something, her eyes searching mine, but I gave nothing away. I hacked her locked app using a software Paul recommended. It was a messaging platform. Her chats with Ethan a tapestry of flirtation and plans. She called him her escape, said I was safe but heavy. Each word was a brick in my resolve. I didn't want to just end her affair. I wanted to rebuild her world into something she couldn't escape, a monument to her betrayal. My revenge began subtly, a series of calculated moves to destabilize Claire's world. I started with her professional life, her pride. She'd been shortlisted for a prestigious design award, a career pinnacle. I knew the judges valued originality, so I anonymously tipped them about similarities between her submission and an obscure European campaign from years ago. It wasn't plagiarism, but it was close enough to raise questions. I sent screenshots, links, and a polite note about protecting the industry's integrity. Within a week, Claire was distraught, her nomination withdrawn. She cried at dinner, saying someone had sabotaged her, but I held her, murmuring support, my face a mask. Next, I targeted Ethan's social circle. I created a fake profile, posing as a jilted ex, and posted vague but damning stories on a local art forum. Hints of Ethan's unreliability, his tendency to charm and discard. The posts spread, and I watched his bookings dwindle through a burner account. Claire noticed his stress, her texts to him growing frantic, but I ensured their meetings were harder to arrange. I'd call her home early, feigning Mia's needs, or schedule surprise date nights. Each disruption was a thread pulled from their affair's fabric. At home, I was the perfect husband, but I'd leave subtle clues. A hotel keycard on her dresser, a faint whiff of Ethan's cologne on my jacket, to keep her paranoid. She was unraveling, and I was just beginning. My bridge wasn't collapsing anymore. I was building a new one, cold and unyielding, to carry me past her betrayal. Claire's world was fraying, and I was the invisible spider weaving the trap. Her confidence, once a radiant force, dimmed with the loss of the design award. She spent hours on calls, trying to salvage her reputation, her voice brittle with frustration. I listened from the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, my face a portrait of concern while my mind plotted the next move. Ethan, too, was stumbling. His bookings had dried up after my anonymous posts, and his social media was a ghost town of vague complaints about haters. I felt a grim satisfaction watching their parallel declines, but it wasn't enough. I wanted Claire to feel the weight of her choices, to see the life she'd built with me crumble under her own hands. I started manipulating her environment. I'd move her car keys, her sketchbooks, small things that made her question her memory. "You okay, babe?" I'd ask, my tone soft, as she tore through the house, flustered. I planted a receipt for a coffee shop she hadn't visited in her purse, dated a day she'd been with Ethan. Her eyes widened when she found it, her fingers trembling, but she said nothing. I knew she was wondering if I suspected, if I was testing her. I let the silence fester. At night, I'd lie beside her, my hand resting on her hip, a gesture of intimacy that now felt like reconnaissance. Her phone was my next target. Using the software Paul had shown me, I intercepted her messages to Ethan, deleting some before she saw them, sending others from her phone, vague, cutting texts that confused him. "I need space," one read, though she'd never written it. Their connection was eroding, and I was the unseen fault line. I doubled down on being the perfect husband, a performance so seamless it unnerved Claire. I planned a weekend getaway for us, a cozy cabin in the Oregon woods, framing it as a chance to reconnect. "We've been so busy," I said, my eyes locked on hers, searching for guilt. She agreed, but her enthusiasm was hollow, her smile a fragile veneer. At the cabin, I cooked her favorite meals, played her favorite songs, and held her close by the fire. She relaxed, almost like the old Claire, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her gaze darted when her phone buzzed. I disabled the Wi-Fi, claiming a bad signal, ensuring she was cut off from Ethan. On the second night, I left a photo of us on her pillow, a snapshot from our honeymoon, with a note, "Forever yours." She stared at it, her face pale, and I wondered if she felt the noose tightening. Back home, I escalated my sabotage. I contacted her biggest client, posing as a concerned colleague, and hinted at her recent unreliability due to personal issues. The client pulled a major project, and Claire's despair deepened. "I don't know what's happening," she sobbed, her head in her hands. I hugged her, whispering, "We'll get through this," while my mind cataloged her pain. Ethan, meanwhile, was spiraling. I'd sent an anonymous tip to his landlord about suspicious activity at his apartment, prompting an inspection that uncovered unpaid rent. His eviction notice was a quiet victory, one I savored while kissing Claire goodnight, her betrayal a fire fueling my resolve. Claire was unraveling, her once vibrant spirit dulled by setbacks she couldn't explain. She'd lost 2 clients now, her portfolio tarnished by whispers of inconsistency. She spent hours staring at her laptop, her designs lackluster, as if her creativity had bled out. I watched her struggle, my empathy a distant memory, replaced by a cold determination to see this through. Ethan's life was collapsing too. His eviction forced him to crash with a friend, his photography gigs non-existent. I'd hacked his email, forwarding a fake cancellation from a potential client, ensuring his desperation grew. Claire's texts to him were frantic, laced with worry, but my intercepted messages kept them apart. I'd delete his replies, leaving her to think he was pulling away. Her paranoia was palpable. She'd check her phone obsessively, her fingers hovering over Ethan's name, but I'd distract her with Mia's homework or a sudden errand. At home, I left more clues. A hotel matchbook in her coat, a single earring not hers in my car. She never confronted me, but her silence screamed guilt. One night, she broke down, saying she felt like she was losing herself. "I'm here," I said, stroking her hair, my voice a blade wrapped in velvet. I started rumors in her professional circle, subtle posts on industry forums about her erratic behavior. Her colleagues began distancing themselves, and her isolation grew. I was dismantling her world, piece by piece, ensuring she'd have nowhere to turn when the final blow landed. My revenge was a cathedral, each stone laid with precision, and I was far from finished. I wanted Claire to feel trapped, to taste the betrayal she'd fed me. I orchestrated a public humiliation, one that would echo through her social and professional spheres. There was an upcoming art gala, a glittering event where Claire was to present a new design for a local nonprofit. It was her chance to rebuild her reputation, and I ensured it would be her undoing. I'd accessed her presentation files through her cloud account and made subtle alterations, swapping her sleek designs for garish, amateurish mock-ups, riddled with typos. I also leaked an email from her account to the nonprofit's board, a forged message where she dismissed their mission as cliché. The email spread like wildfire, and by the gala's morning, Claire was a pariah. She arrived at the venue, unaware, her dress elegant but her eyes haunted. I attended as her supportive husband, my arm around her, while whispers followed us. When her presentation loaded, the room gasped at the shoddy work, murmurs turning to laughter. Claire froze, her face crimson, stammering apologies. The nonprofit's director publicly chastised her, and she fled the stage in tears. I followed, feigning shock, but inside, I was the conductor watching my symphony crescendo. Ethan, too, faced a blow. I'd sent an anonymous package to his friend's apartment, filled with incriminating photos of him with Claire, labeled cheater. His friend kicked him out, leaving him homeless. Claire came home that night, broken, and I held her, my words soothing but my heart stone. She was alone now, her allies gone, and I was the only pillar left. One she didn't know was rigged to collapse. The endgame was near, and I was ready to unveil my masterpiece. Claire was a shell, her career in tatters, her affair with Ethan fractured by my manipulations. She clung to me, her guilt a silent weight, unaware I knew everything. I planned the final act with surgical precision, a revelation that would strip her bare. I invited her to a date night at the same boutique hotel where she'd met Ethan, claiming it was a surprise to lift her spirits. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with unease, but agreed. I booked the same room number from her affair, a detail I knew would haunt her. Before we left, I slipped a burner phone into her purse, programmed with texts from Ethan, fabricated messages begging her to meet him, confessing his love. I'd ensured Ethan was across town, unaware, by sending him a fake gig offer. At the hotel, I led Claire to the room, my demeanor warm but my intent glacial. The room was staged. A bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a printed photo of her and Ethan, one Paul had taken, tucked under a pillow. As we sat, I accidentally found the burner phone in her purse, its screen lighting up with Ethan's texts. "What's this?" I asked, my voice calm but laced with steel. Claire paled, stammering denials, but I pressed play on a hidden recorder. Audio of her and Ethan, clipped from her hacked app, their intimate whispers filling the room. She collapsed, sobbing, begging forgiveness, but I stood, my face unyielding. "You built this," I said, leaving her in the room, the door clicking shut like a guillotine. My bridge was complete and she was on the wrong side forever. Leaving Claire in that hotel room felt like severing a cable that had held my life together for years. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring through my windshield, my hands steady but my chest hollow. I'd spent months constructing this revenge, each move a precise calculation, yet the victory tasted like ash. Claire's sobs echoed in my mind, her broken pleas for forgiveness, a sound I'd orchestrated but couldn't unhear. When I got home, Mia was at her grandparents'. I'd arranged it to keep her shielded. The house was too quiet, our shared space now a museum of betrayal. Claire's sketchbooks littered the coffee table. Her half-finished mugs of tea sat on the counter, and I felt like an intruder in my own life. She didn't come home that night. Her texts started an hour later, a flood of apologies, explanations, promises to change. I read them without responding, each word a brick she'd laid in her own ruin. I checked Ethan's social media. His accounts were silent, his life appended by my anonymous blows. I dismantled their world, but mine was collateral damage. The next morning, Claire appeared, her eyes swollen, her voice raw. She begged to talk, to explain, but I was stone. "Pack your things," I said, my tone flat. She flinched as if I'd struck her, but I felt no pity. I'd given her my trust, my years, and she'd traded them for stolen moments. She moved to the guest room, her presence a ghost I couldn't exorcise. My revenge wasn't over. It was evolving, a structure I'd keep refining until she understood the depth of her loss. I wanted Claire's betrayal to be a spectacle, a story whispered in the circles she'd once ruled. I'd already tarnished her professionally, but now I aimed for her social world. I crafted an anonymous blog post, detailing a hypothetical tale of a designer's infidelity, laced with enough specifics, her favorite cafe, her signature scarf, that her friends would know it was her. I posted it on a local art community forum, where it spread like wildfire. By midday, Claire's phone buzzed with messages from friends, some accusing, others distancing themselves. She sat in the guest room, scrolling, her face crumpling as her social scaffolding collapsed. I watched from the kitchen, pretending to read emails, my heart a cold engine. Ethan wasn't spared. I sent an anonymous tip to a local art magazine, exposing his unethical conduct with a married colleague, ensuring his name was mud in the industry. His last post, A desperate plea for work went unanswered. Claire tried to confront me, her voice shaking. Did you do this? The blog? The rumors? I met her gaze, unblinking. Why would I said, letting her doubt fester. She had no proof, but suspicion was enough. I kept up the facade of normalcy for Mia's sake, taking her to school, reading her bedtime stories, while Claire hovered like a stranger. Each night, I planned my next move, ensuring Claire's isolation grew. I'd taken her career, her lover, her friends. Now I'd take her peace. I started leaving subtle reminders of her affair around the house. A hotel pen on her desk, a playlist with songs Ethan had mentioned in their chats. She'd freeze when she saw them, her guilt a cage I'd built with her own hands. Claire's emotional ruin was nearly complete, but I wanted her to feel the practical weight of her choices. She'd always been proud of her independence, her ability to contribute to our family. I decided to erode that. I accessed our joint accounts, something I'd never touched before, trusting her implicitly, and began siphoning small amounts into a separate account I'd opened. It wasn't theft. It was reallocation, a way to limit her options. I canceled her personal credit card, citing fraud concerns, and watched her panic when it was declined at a grocery store. I'll fix it, I said, feigning concern, but I delayed, letting her scramble. I also contacted her remaining clients, posing as a concerned vendor, and hinted at her financial instability. 2 more pulled their contracts, leaving her income a trickle. She started selling her art supplies online, her desperation palpable. Ethan, meanwhile, was destitute. I'd tipped off his creditors about his eviction, and collection notices piled up at his friend's address. Claire tried to help him, sneaking cash from her dwindling savings, but I'd set up alerts on her accounts and confronted her about the withdrawals. Helping a friend? I asked, my voice icy. She stammered, caught, and I walked away, leaving her to stew. At home, I maintained my role as the steady father, shielding Mia from the chaos, but Claire's presence was a wound. She'd try to talk to Mia, to rebuild normalcy, but I'd interrupt, redirecting our daughter's attention. I wanted Claire to feel like an outsider in her own family, a consequence she'd earned. My revenge was a machine now, humming with purpose, and I was its relentless engineer. Mia was my anchor, the one piece of my life I refused to let Claire's betrayal taint. But I used her, too, in my revenge. Not cruelly, but strategically. I encouraged Mia to talk about our family, to draw pictures of mommy and daddy at school, knowing Claire would see them and feel the sting of her exclusion. I planned outings with Mia, zoo trips, ice cream runs, and invited Claire only to subtly undermine her. Mommy's tired, I'd say when she hesitated, planting seeds of doubt in Mia's mind. Claire's attempts to connect with Mia faltered. She was too fragile, her guilt a barrier. I also orchestrated a family dinner with Claire's parents, who adored me. I let slip small truths, her late nights, her stress, framing them as concern. Her mother's probing questions left Claire defensive, her lies unraveling. I sat back, the dutiful son-in-law, while her family's trust in her eroded. Ethan's life, meanwhile, was a footnote. I'd ensured his car was repossessed by tipping off his lender, leaving him stranded. Claire's texts to him stopped. She had no energy left to save him. At home, I kept the pressure on. I'd leave doors unlocked, lights on, mimicking the chaos of an affair's aftermath, letting her wonder if I was watching her. She barely slept, her eyes sunken, her hands trembling. One night, she tried to touch me, a desperate bid for connection, but I pulled away. I can't, I said, my voice final. She wept, and I felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of a plan nearing completion. My revenge was a tapestry, each thread tightening around her, and the final knot was coming. I wanted Claire to leave our life voluntarily, to walk away carrying the weight of her ruin. I staged the final act with precision. I rented a small apartment in her name, using her email to sign the lease, and sent her the keys in an unmarked envelope. Inside, I included a note. Start over. You don't belong here. She found it in her car, her face ashen as she read it. I watched from the porch, my expression neutral, But she didn't confront me. She knew. I'd also prepared a divorce filing, not yet submitted, but I left the papers on her desk, a silent ultimatum. The terms were harsh. I'd keep primary custody of Mia, the house, most of our assets. She'd get her freedom, nothing else. That night, she packed a bag, her movements slow, like someone underwater. "I'm sorry," she whispered, standing in the doorway. I didn't respond, my silence a wall. She left, the door closing softly, and I stood in the quiet, my revenge complete. Ethan was a nonentity now, his life shattered beyond repair. I'd sold his camera equipment through a proxy, his last lifeline gone. Claire moved into the apartment, her career dead, her friends gone, her family distant. I rebuilt my life with Mia, our home a fortress of routine and love. Months later, I heard Claire was working a desk job, her spark extinguished. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My bridge stood strong, built on the rubble of her betrayal, and I walked forward, unburdened, into a life she'd never touch again.